Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Insanity Land. Oh goodness, it's funny. I spent probably a good half hour. Oh, by the way, this is the Daily Brief recap, brought to you by the good people at Tide Laundry Detergent. No, sorry, Tide Laundry Detergent right now is going lawsuit, lawsuit. Don't say our name in your crappy little broadcast. Anyway, Brian's in a weird mood today, eh? But good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome back to our fun little broadcast. I'll try in the next 10, 20 minutes sort of summarize what's going on in the market, but, really sadly, the only thing that's actually paramount on my mind right now is, 2020. This is an event that in this particular write-up, there's Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto relationships. This particular event, the last time it happened was in 1894 BC. So if anybody happens to have their almanacs handy and can tell me what the hell was going on in the world back in 1894 BC, and don't you find it kind of interesting that we don't have any history from back then? Did something big happen in the universe and in the world, Earth's little microcosm of existence that we really don't have any data from back then? Seems a bit odd, doesn't it? But anyway, as the girl that I think I shared a video with her, she was saying, like, this is a once in a lifetime event. And, the sad part about it is, and Kevin and I were even kind of talking about this to start the conversation off. I mean, how do you realistically, justifiably explain what the hell's going on here? There isn't a hell of a lot of logic to a lot of what's going on. Ironically enough, I mean, this is the kick in the pants, is that, if we ever do get back to talking about economics, we actually find that the economic data right now actually is pretty good. That's the kick in the pants. I mean, everybody's going to be like, well, the economic data going down the road is going to be horrible. But, employment data came out and, jobs numbers in the States are rip-roaring. People are, unemployment rate's going to tick down here. And, people are earning pretty good money. So, the irony of it all. And here's the kick in the pants, right? You can clearly see that consumers are still spending money in the States. Remember, the United States is technically a net exporter of crude oil now, so you can't blame this. Oh my God, we're all dependent on the Arabs or whatever and their oil and stuff like that, and we're screwed by them. That's not what's going on here. Is consumers are still spending money. Economy is just humming along here. So that's the irony of all of this, is that the econs are actually relatively friendly. So what the hell's going on? How do you explain these insane moves? I put out a tweet today saying, honestly, people, you might as well take a screenshot of that. These are supposed to be boring, low volatility, coupon paying, conservative investments. What the hell is going on here? This is crazy. Take a picture of that, because like 10, 20 years from now, we're going to look back on that and go, remember the heady days when interest rates were collapsing? Because I tell you, these are interesting times we're living in. The only way I can realistically explain this is these long-term cycles. And coming to the end of demographic cycles. And, you can align it with world geopolitics, and frankly speaking, I think this coronavirus scare is getting a little bit overblown. Yeah, people are going to get sick. People do get sick in winters. It happens. But at the same time, too, I think it's more a question about fear. People fearing getting sick, right? Roosevelt in the Great Depression, he always said the biggest fear that, how does it go? How does the saying go? The biggest fear that we have is fear itself, or something along those lines. And it's really more, I think, a question of human psychology and human behavior, really, versus like fundamentals. I mean, does it really make sense why the interest rate market is collapsing here so violently? I don't think it makes sense, other than you say, well, what if the whole world economy collapses because of this coronavirus and everybody's being sent home? Well, what ifs. Okay, fine. Um, Really, my advice, and I've sort of said this a couple times now, 2020, you're probably best to, if you aren't sort of well educated and are trading plans and stuff, do your dollar cost averaging, and if anything, if stock markets crash, great, that means stuff goes on sale. And in a weird sort of way, on the TRI site, a bunch of our site members do dollar cost averaging in Bitcoin, and they're rooting for the price to go down right now. I don't think it's going to happen for them, but they're rooting for price to go down. And, dollar cost averagers, think of this as, when stock market crashes, ironic, if you buy the indexes and, big, institutional mutual funds and stuff like that, well, really all you're doing is you're just getting stuff on sale. Definitely don't think it's a good idea to be chasing these kind of markets up here. I mean, that's our basic premise is this is after the move. This is not beginning of the move. Well, I'll tell you, I sure am regretting not covering my bond short there. Right? Thank heavens it was an option and didn't have to worry about like margin calls or anything. But wow, certainly didn't expect that to happen. And if anything, I'll tell you, it's can't write better fiction than reality. I mean, I'm not, the great part about TRI is that this is a group effort. So what ends up happening is through the week, we have different various contributors that come on. Interestingly enough, Julian was actually shorting gold through this dump this morning and made great money. And he did an awesome report. And then he's like, well, I got to go back in on the buy side now. So, I mean, I love the fact that Julian's gotten to the point where he is now a professional trader and he's just having fun trading away. If you want to participate in the market, then that, you have to have your trading plan and you have to have your journal. Great to hear Julian journaling up a storm through all this and just, really learning about himself and the way that he's behaving through this. So we had Julian's report yesterday, and people on the site really, really liked his report. And today, another TRI OGer, Colin, who actually used to be an analyst on another cryptocurrency site, but they kind of folded up shop. They couldn't survive through the crypto bear there. So he does a fairly regular commentary presentation on TRI on Fridays. And we were all really pleased and privileged with Colin's view of the market right now. And really interesting. I think it basically aligns with everything that we're sort of seeing in the market. So at the moment, U.S. dollar, and I've sort of talked about this at length too. Now that we're actually breaking this pattern of higher highs and higher lows, I have to start saying, okay, there's problems with this picture. And obviously, right, coronavirus, the world's coming to an end. We're not business as usual. It is interesting that I had painted this potential megaphone pattern here developing, and that looks like the kind of market that we're in right now. And of course, the problem with megaphones is this is a V top, these are V bottoms, so really there's nothing structurally sound here. We could be banging back and forth, just crazy ass violence through the rest of this year. I mean, get ready, folks, 2020. I mean, what a mess this is. So, and certainly I have no trades through this whatsoever. And, conversely, I'm thinking about wanting to get in on the short side on the euro. Looking at the econs again, I think the North American story is much, much better than the European story. But the market's kind of just in absolute free fall right now. It's not even thinking logically. So you go and look at that euro chart, and there's no top here for me to think about, selling into. In fact, we have to keep moving our studies higher. This might actually be a midpoint, and the thing just keeps charging higher here. There's nothing for me to do right now. And of course, things like yen, is a risk off kind of conversation. Risk offers, of course, are catching great bids. Risk honors are getting their asses kicked. Interesting how Bitcoin in a weird sort of way, it's like crypto is almost sheltered from a lot of this broader market mess. And, this kind of thing kind of validates Tom Lee's kind of thinking, uncorrelated assets. So we'll see how corn does. Maybe it has to play catch up with the risk assets here. But we do have a little bit of a W working. So let's hope that holds in. And also, too, we had, show you really quickly, we had some bearish patterns that were working on Ethereum. They ended up breaking those bearish patterns off like the lower time frame charts, like 4-hour bearish bots. So thank heavens, it looks to me like in a weird sort of way, crypto right now, just for the present, is dodging the broader market's chaos. How sustainable is this over time? I don't know. I mean, we can get to the Bitcoin chart in a moment, but at least, hey, it's green. It's not red, so that's encouraging. Again, I don't know whether I can really add to the equation. I'm just going to simply say that, we watch, we've been affectionately calling this lately these Trump dumps. If we go back to those celestial cycles, it's interesting how we have a date coming up here, April 5th, which is interesting because that's right around the Easter holiday, first day of spring, past the Ides of March. I've been worried about the Ides of March as a celestial event. Then we have a date coming up end of June, and usually the stock market sell in May and walk away. It usually bottoms into that July 4th weekend, so actually that aligns nicely with a pivot. And then finally, what I'm really worried about is this November 12th, because November 12th, this is the big Jupiter-Saturn cross. That's about a week and a half on the other side of the U.S. presidential election. And what really worries me is I have a funny feeling that this is going to be a really ugly election. I think the results are going to be contested, and it could get extremely chaotic around the United States of America through that window. I'm not going to say this is going to be easy, folks. This could be really, really messy. So I've put those dates on sort of my calendar as pivots to watch here. I still do like the idea of Trump dumps, and we were kind of making jokes in the daily brief. They're chunky, they're orange. You often have to run to the bathroom very, very quickly, but then have to sit on the toilet for a bit of time as they sort of fuck around with the public and really mess with their heads. So, the problem here, of course, is people are going to, open up their newspapers, turn on their televisions, they're going to say, oh, Dow's down 527 points, wow! After a while, you're going to see up 700, down 500, up 1,000, down 400, all this kind of mess. And the public at some point is going to start to become immune to these huge numbers. But interestingly enough, as you can see on the price chart, actually we didn't break down here, did we? Yeah, it's a down day. Really, you could make the argument, I said this the other day, probably watch for candle body lows as trade location. Look how they brought the market right down into that level, and then now they're trying to bring it back. I have no idea how this is going to play out. Nobody does, for certain. My hunch, like I said, Trump dumps. Think of all my wonderful, colorful analogies. My hunch is it looks something along these lines, but could we A, B, C, D our way down lower here into higher time frame reload zones? Sure, the market do any old damn thing it wants. For me to start thinking about bearish bots, of course, like I showed you with that ETH chart, I'd like to see three lower highs to set up a trade. So it's still too early for me to go either one way or the other. And as I said before, I'm actually thinking along these kind of lines, but we'll see what happens. Only time will tell. You can see a whole bunch of highs started to set up. Okay, are we going to trend continuation our way lower? And they said, nope, we're not, and back up we go. So I think that's what has to happen here, is this still is going to take another week or two. And gee whiz, notice 26th of March, That would just be sort of this kind of correction, and there's that April 5th deadline. Celestial event. I actually think that this is not going to turn until that Easter long weekend. That's sort of my hunch, but we'll see what happens. And then the next one, this is classic pivot. Like I said, end of June, very cliche. Beginning of July. So, I don't know. I mean, maybe we're thinking like this and like this. And, maybe this is actually a pivot trough and everything's, throw the baby out with the bathwater into that event. I don't know. It's tough to say. But those are our cycle pivots that I'm going to be watching really closely for cues out of the market going forward based on those. Now, keep in mind, 2020... like I said, just those three, Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn, just the three of them alone. We haven't seen this kind of event all happening in 1 year for 4,000 years, or, better part. This is like a literal, and it turns out there's like 5 of them. So there's 2 of them that are not even in that little blurb that I showed you. I mean, this is like a once in a lifetime event window, people. And gee whiz, the market's acting. I think, as I said earlier, I've been in the market 30 years. I've never seen this before. Never. I would have never expected this. But, they say, can't write better in fiction than reality. Don't get into the habit of predicting the future, people. Just trade your setups because this kind of shit's happened. And I can tell you, absolutely, a month or so ago, nobody saw this coming. So, and then there's going to be the one guy, oh, I saw this coming. I did. Okay, well, all right. Interesting to watch how the gold is sort of stalling out up against its old highs. In that, the other day I had actually mentioned, something's not right about this gold bull. The gold stocks themselves are actually smiling at you. That's not a good sign. And as I've sort of said, you know what, I'm just going to leave this alone, just let it settle. And what really worries me about the commodity story is crude oil this is not a buy at all. And it just keeps careening lower. And ironically enough, this is actually very typical of the end of commodity bulls. I put out a tweet earlier today saying, you know what, oil is a 20th century story. We see the writing on the walls, whether it be Greta or whether it be Mr. Tesla, that kind of stuff. Oil is an old story. And then also, too, 17.5-year fear greed cycles. Hard assets are not the place to be in going forward for the next 10, 15 years. I had some long leanings as we came down against these lows and decided to take a couple shots, and all 3 of them blasted through their lows, and I walked away from everything. In fact, actually, my last oil bull idea, I had to close it out yesterday. Just because, I trade setups. You can see the W. I bought the W. We broke the lows. I got to get out of here. And sure enough, these things are all heading lower. So, really, really nasty sign in the oil business. And frankly speaking, I think actually the world, you're not expecting this, but we're going to actually go through a period where a lot of these oil companies are going to go through massive bankruptcies. I think you heard my rants the other day about Canada and the way that it invested and mortgaged its future on this tar sands. And that entire investment is going to become completely worthless in my mind. Scary, really. Scary times we're living in. The good part about this, though, and this is the greatest part. If anything, it's almost poetic. Because now all the crypto kids finally get vindication. Where the hell's that damn chart I want? Where's my chart deck here? Is it this one? Yeah. It might be things like for the record, I have to go on the record as saying I showed you a stock yesterday that turns out that they are in the pod industry, and actually I kind of like the idea because they're in the psychedelics, magic mushrooms. Part of the market, so actually I do kind of like the story. But I showed you a stock yesterday, that BOS, and I went on and I bought a little bit of this guy here. You can see I'm just sitting there. Brian, you should look at this and go, yeah, W's rising volume, RSI W's. Okay, that can make sense. But I'm underwater on it. I'm down 30 cents on the trade right now. So, it's a tough. And, if anything, this is a really good analogy. This is classic Linda Bradford Ratchke. If you don't know who she is and you reckon yourself a trader, Google her, get to know her. I used to talk to her when at my old prop firm when I was trading there. And I always asked her, how many times do you take a shot on an idea? And she said the magic rule, the magic number for me is 2. And so you can see this W. I kind of like this as sort of a unicorn kind of name. And then also, too, maybe it has a play on coronavirus. People are going to stay at home and order online and not, go to the grocery store kind of thing. So there was a W that came in here. I took a shot and boom, get the fuck out. Then another W came in. All right, so this is number 2. I'll take my shot. If I get blasted out, I'm not going to buy this again. But we'll see how it goes. Only time will tell. But what did I want to? What is that? Where's I going with this? Is there an area of the market? Oh yeah, that's and I was even telling Kevin yesterday, I do not like to give people wrong information, and this was just purely a mistake on my part yesterday. Calling this a crypto stock, and I just want to go on the record as saying I apologize. That was an egregious error on my part, and I really don't like when I make those kind of mistakes, so my apologies. The point I'm trying to make here is, crypto, I think, actually could potentially be almost like a safe haven in this absolute mess. The cool part about it is we had that Saturn-Pluto cross, and that, I hope you all saw, literally crypto bottomed the day that happened, and literally, on balance, really hasn't looked back since. And then, of course, we look at all these indexes and all these various different coins and the stocks, and I'm like, damn. So, this was one that we talked about recently. I bought the W off of the bottom. I was able to bang out a double, so I got free stock. But son of a bitch, look at what's going on here. It's staring you right in the face. And again, this is, stock market's collapsing, Dow's down 500 points, and this thing's Wing and rallying on the day? How dare you? And what's so cool, right? We'll do like a little chaos theory. I don't see any reason why this stock can't jump up to 52 cents. You see the big gap right up here. W's are W's are W's. I'm already long, so it's not like I have to buy any more. I got a free position, but I looked at this today and I almost went, you know what? Maybe I got to go grab some more. So I like this crypto sector. I got to tell you, man. And it might actually be one of these kind of things where, maybe we can hide out the storm and all the mess. I tell you, stay away from oil. I don't like what I'm seeing here whatsoever. I know there's going to be a lot of people going, oh, these things are steals, they're bargains. But I do not like oil now at all. I've had, it's almost like a religion. As soon as we lost these lows in here, my whole propensity to be long oil now is out the window. So, if anything, in a weird sort of way, collapsing oil prices, I think, actually help crypto a lot. What's the one big bitch about, Bitcoin mining? Oh, it uses up half of the world's electricity, or it's so cost inappropriate. Well, what happens if energy prices collapse here? We go through this massive deflationary spiral. Technically, that means that crypto actually becomes a hell of a lot more profitable, and it's going to attract interest. So, in a weird sort of way, the one real beneficiary in this absolute insano 2020, interest rates collapsing, energy prices collapsing, deflationary pressures absolutely rampant, you can always run into crypto. I find this fascinating. Really good lesson of long term. And what I tried to say on the site today in the videos that I was doing on the site today, the daily brief, was I hope you see that really after this event, you could make the argument that the market is actually the process of this triangle is, people call this a crash, but it's not really a crash. What it's doing is it's trying to clean up the excesses of this nonsense. We could pull up the SPY, and really it's the same logic. At some point this thing's got to triangle out, but the worst part about it is you keep zooming out and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, you can see the triangle-y type pattern. This is George Bush Jr., Republican Party totally manipulating the market. But really, I could make the argument that this was our consolidation window in here, right? And then the powers that be go and dilute the crap out of the currency. Really, this probably should not have happened, other than it's a function of the currency being manipulated. But hopefully you can see that sort of similar kind of, I mean, it's not to as big a degree, but hopefully you can see that parabolic move. At some point, this market has to go through this same sort of triangle-y type action to set the base for the next rally. So, hopefully you look at this and go, well, I can completely understand. This market's kind of going nosebleedy. You can clearly see momentum has broken here. So we've done a lot of technical damage over the past little while. You might find that the 2020s could be very much like the 1930s, where we have to spend like a decade just cleaning this equity market up. That could definitely be the case. But I guess the point I'm really trying to make here, I don't really want to talk stock market. What I want to talk about is the fact that this has now gone through, and we're at the end point of this massive consolidation. So I actually can understand the argument that maybe people are just going to hide out in crypto as the rest of the world sort of gets its act together. And of course, this is going to be vindication for all the Bitcoin maximalists and all that kind of stuff. As the broader economy finally just sort of unwinds. Anyway, kind of a funny rant there for you today. Higher time frame, or what am I trying to say here? Looking at this from a short term, what the heck's price doing perspective, just sort of zooming in. We had sort of talked a little bit recently about AB equals CDs. It's interesting. We hit a high here of 91.82. It might be interesting to see whether we actually hit that AB equals CD. Came darn close, eh? If we go boobity boo and boobity boo and clone that, and we'll go boobity shmoo. No, looks like could go a little bit higher. I don't really see any technical damage here. If anything, for those lower time frame traders, it's probably a nice little bot setup forming here. I think we had talked recently about, and actually, what's the best way to do this? Let's maybe go out here. What's some sort of realistic rally expectations? We talked yesterday, is the market going to accept above 13 EMA? You can see that battle's going on right now. If we can, then you can see resistance, basically up 30 SMA, sitting here about 9,500. You can see the original breakdown level off of this M is at 94.67. This M here, that's 92.75. I don't see any reason why we can't work our way up into here. I think I've said this before. I didn't really see any sort of trade develop here out of this. And if anything, what I was worried about was whether Ethereum was going to roll over here and break hard. And sort of thank heavens it didn't. We had this high here. Remember, we sort of battled up, or were we going to inside bar fail? You could argue there's another one of those nice little bull-bear battle lines, right? That high there. If we go boom, 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 break that high, that fractal fires. And if we inside bar failed there, right, that would have been a failure signal. I think that was actually exactly the same thing what Bitcoin did, right? It put in a doji on that candle, and we turned back up. It was interesting last night because Bitcoin broke out, but Ethereum couldn't. Like, it ran into that 13 EMA and was rejected. Then we opened up, and they said, screw it, we're taking this thing up. Boom! And ran the stops up top here. So, on balance over the short term, that's a good sign. It's not bad. If this thing's going to fail now, my suggestion would be to follow that trend line. So my hunch is this thing's probably going to like wiggle around in here and maybe do something like that. And if we fail, it'll be through that trend line. And then, of course, our rule is take the first market structure on the other side of the trend line if you're actually going to go short. So Ethereum looks good. You know, this doesn't look bad. And as I said before just a moment ago, I wonder whether, in a weird sort of way, crypto's almost acting like that ultimate uncorrelated asset that Tom Lee, I think his name is. He likes that thinking about crypto. You know, I'm still on the fence. I don't know whether, you know, these three assets are moving in conjunction, but you can clearly see stock's not happy, oil just getting its ass kicked, and there's Bitcoin putting in a little W. So more sort of anecdotal disconnect kind of messages. And I tell you, I've said this before, I'll say it again. I mean, you can play the corn. I don't really have a trade set up here, as you can see. And, you know, next time I do get a nice higher time frame setup, I'll, you know, throw on the metric and we'll watch how it does. But the part of the market that I love right now are the shit coins. I got to tell you, shit tastes great right now. Somebody grab that sound bite. Oh, man. I mean, I think I've shown you recently we picked up a little bit of this VTC Trump dump hedge. And I was joking with somebody online. We got Viacoin. I mean, Mr. Eat Ass himself rallying. We've got the perp indexes. We've got Trump dumps happening in the stock market. Brian loves the taste of shit right now. What is there some sort of theme to all this right now? What the hell's going on? Anyway, you know, I'm nowhere near anything like a double or anything on this VTC now. But if anything, hopefully you can see, well, you know, that was a W. It's not a bad idea to pick up a bit more of that. I'll be banging out doubles way up top here. So, I mean, I'm not really in any hurry right now. But hopefully what this is validation of this whole W concept. And sure enough, there goes price moving up. So I love the altcoin market right now. I think it's beautiful. If anything, I'm a little pissed off that there is so much buying interest because the names I want to buy, the price is not coming down, you sons of bitches. And I wouldn't be surprised to see this thing pop the top here, you know. I mean, I can't chase. You know how I trade. W's, trying to buy against bottom ends of range, yada, yada, yada. I mean, if you were so inclined, I'm sure you could drill down to like an hourly chart and maybe hunt like a little bot trend continuation setup to take you up top. That's totally doable. What's this? Oh, I've got an alert here. Is that an old level? I don't know why I have that alert there. That's interesting. I wonder what the hell that's all about. All right, anyway, sort of off topic. The point I just wanted to mention, I mean, this isn't even the best list. Like I said, we had Colin on the call today, and I love when Colin comes on the call because what Colin does is he takes his whole crypto universe, and like I said, he actually worked at an analyst, crypto specific analysis site, and I think he's great. Process person, really, really good at the process. So he takes his whole universe and then he breaks them down into, okay, these coins are in location. So he gives them a certain color, and then when he starts seeing divergence, he gives those a certain color. And then, you know, after location and divergence is in place, then all he's doing is he's got a short list, and he's just looking for W's, and as soon as he sees a W, boom, he buys. I think that's a great approach. Awesome approach. And, you know, going through the call today, name after name after name after name is really interesting. We always say that there's always a scandal brewing in crypto. Please understand, this is venture capital. There are always scandals. There are always crooks. There are always people that are just in this for the money. They don't give a flying fuck about you as a person. Just remember that. Get used to it. It is the way it is. And it's just venture capital. Same thing if it's a penny stock market or altcoins. No difference. It's the same shit, different pile. So keep an eye on how this Steam It story plays out. Colin did a great summary of Mr. Sun. Um, um, and some very interesting also too about this story, which I find interesting, is Mr. Sun called up his buddies at other cryptocurrency exchanges and, to all intents and purposes, really did something that's actually quite illegal. But because this is an unregulated space, fuck you, right? Get used to it. In that your coins that were theoretically on these exchanges that theoretically should be your property, the exchange operators basically disregarded your rights and did what Mr. Sun wanted them to do with your coins sitting on these exchanges. This is a problem with POS coins. It's also a problem with not your keys, not your coins. This should be a really interesting, in a weird sort of way, almost precedent setting. That basically Mr. Sun went in. I don't know whether you would call it a 51% attack, but he basically went in and completely manipulated this blockchain for his best interests. And also, too, coming out of this, what was really interesting was he was able to do this on these unregulated exchanges, but there are exchanges that were kind of like, no, we don't want to be a part of that. Namely, I was actually very impressed to hear that Trex was not part of this conversation whatsoever. So keep your eyes and ears peeled about this Steam It story. I think it'll be a really interesting precedent-setting event going forward, especially with regard to POS coins. I think that's about all I'm going to want to say here today. Half of the problem here is, when you do these kind of free videos and stuff like that, people want like the reason. What's the reason? Okay, so why is this happening? And of course, when you look at this kind of price action, it's very difficult to actually say, well, this is the reason. And the basic message that I'm trying to tell people is I actually honestly believe 30 years in this business, the reason is where we are in the cycle. And sadly, I was a broker through one of these cycles before. Logic just goes right out the window. Literally right out the window. As I had said earlier today, the econs coming out are actually extremely robust. The U.S. economy is actually extremely strong right now. Does it explain them throwing the baby out with the bathwater in the stock market? Not really, in my opinion. This is all about short-term fear and catching a flu bug that actually, technically, statistically, if you are under the age of 50, has an incredibly low percentage of actually killing you. It's only the elderly that are really susceptible. Thank heavens I'm still 49. So hopefully I sneak in underneath that age bracket. But the irony of it all is that if you are under the age of 50, the statistical odds of you dying from this flu bug are staggeringly low. So, maybe, again, think this crazy cycle period. Think throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Think not much logic. What I will say is that usually, like I said, 30 years at this, usually what has to happen is a recession. We've been talking about recession happening now for the past few years. They usually happen in 8s, 9s, 0s, 1s, and 2s. Here we are in a 0. It's either going to happen this year, next year, or the following, I'm telling you. And all of the pieces are being put in place that I can see that we're at the end of this insane long cycle, and then everything will fall apart, and the governments will have to come in rushing in to save the day again. Probably dilute the shit out of the currency. Bitcoin has justification to rally to 100 grand. That kind of talk. But don't get too wrapped up in the emotion of this. And ironically enough, go out there and go shopping in altcoin land and cryptocurrency related stocks, because I think they're absolutely on sale right now. And I actually think it's probably not a bad place to hide out and just avoid all the grown-ups and the okay boomers and them freaking out about getting sick with flu bugs. Okay, everybody, there's my rant for the day. Who knows how long that was? I feel like it was quite long, but I hope you got some value out of that. All the best, and bye for now.